Hello and welcome to the video. This is me up here in the corner. This is Raphael. Say hello, Raphael.
Hello.
Hello. So this gentleman here is one of the developers behind EdgeTX, one of the many people giving their time and effort for free so that we can get a new operating system for our radios. Now, I did a video, I'll put a link down below, back late November, early December, where I took the plunge and I downloaded the first version that I tried of EdgeTX after hearing how amazing it was in all the forums and seeing all of the content on YouTube. And I felt a little bit disappointed. And I think the reason for that was because as I said in that video, my expectations had been set so high. In reality, the EdgeTX is kind of work in progress. It didn't quite meet those expectations. And I got quite a bit of flack in that video from people, kind of, EdgeTX is amazing. And it is. But this gentleman here, Raphael, was fantastic because he actually emailed me and contacted me and said, Lee, I kind of agree with everything you said. I'd love to have a chat. And we had a really, really great chat. We spoke for about an hour and a half or something like that in December. And we've been in contact ever since. Now, the reason I'm making this video is to kind of update you. If you watched that video and came away thinking EdgeTX is not a viable operating system because Lee didn't like it, that was absolutely not the intention. And also, in the intervening 4 months, EdgeTX has continued to evolve and become very, very stable and addressed lots of the things that have been going on. So Raphael has very kindly given up 20 minutes this morning for me to have a chat with him. And I thought it would be useful to kind of talk about what's changed, but also what's going on in the project, because stuff that's happened in the last year, because EdgeTX has only been around for 12 months. Amazingly, it feels like it's been around for 18 months, 2 years, but it's only been a project for about a year. What has actually gone on? So let's say hello to Raphael. Good morning, Raphael. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Marvelous.
Oh, extra special thank you for giving time up when you're on holiday then, to talk to me, to talk about EdgeTX, because I know this is something that you do an awful lot of work on. Again, thank you to you for getting in touch in December and telling me that I wasn't completely off the reservation with my, comments about what I was missing in EdgeTX. Because it turns out that you guys were thinking the same things anyway, weren't you?
Yes, definitely. So there were quite a few things that were still not where we expect them, where we want them to be, and this is not finished, definitely not finished yet. So first thing was to get on par with OpenTX, because the code that we took was basically a 90% recoded version, at least for the color UI, and was still having missing things, things that just wouldn't work and things like that. I hope we have already cleared this out. We should be normally probably on par. We get less and less of these. Well, but this works on OpenTX and it doesn't on EdgeTX. I'm like, oh, no, we need to fix this. So this has mostly gone, I would say, mostly.
I would have to agree with that, Raphael. I'm one of those people who uses an awful lot of the OpenTX system, and it's a huge, complicated monster of a radio operating system. And when I first used EdgeTX back in November, I found that lots of things that I wanted to do that I naturally go to because I'm a bit weird, weren't quite working properly. However, in the latest version, that all seems good. But I think that was part of my issue. It was because I think a lot of people in the early days that were saying it was such an amazing operating system was because they were using a subset that you guys had sorted out, maybe 20% of what OpenTX can do. And that and so much more was working great. I think it was those of us who were coming from OpenTX who use 80-90% of what OpenTX can do that were bumping into stuff that was a bit wacky and that you kind of go. And I love the fact that you guys have been so responsive about that. Because I know in the last 4 months, you guys have worked very hard to address all those crazy things that people like me and other OpenTX pilots find, where we go, oh, I've just tried this. And it, exactly as you say, it works in OpenTX, but it doesn't work in Edge, because Edge now seems to be pretty much there. But I'm guessing that's also for you, the profile of the pilots using EdgeTX has changed in the past year as well, hasn't it?
Definitely. So we started with basically ELRS users because I had lots of contacts in their forum. Also a good share of really people using OpenTX for now, like 8 years or something like that, 8-10 years.
Yeah.
So. But that weren't using so many features actually. So, and that was good because that was good input from the beginning. And now user base is basically changing. So we have a lot more, people who, by the way, received their radio with EdgeTX on it. We also have, new users who, I think we're in this wait and see mode, waiting just like you did actually. And I would say, so for the people who used OpenTX for years, they're not much surprised. So we still have deficiencies in what you said back in December, certain UI things which we could do better. And this is what we want to tackle actually this year. So making some simplifications, having the UI more usable for 80% of the people, but still not losing features. So making it simpler for the bigger share. As I like to say, there are some options who are going to disappear behind a advanced button, just like you know it on Windows or whatever. Trying to streamline. And this is very hard. And this is where we need community input actually. And because it is very hard to grasp who are the 80%.
Yeah.
And what are the 20% features that are really used,
by everyone.
mainly.
Yeah.
By everyone, yes. So this is something we are still talking about. I don't know how this will end, but I think we should split things more topic related. Like instead of having a huge model setup screen, for example, the timers, that's always the same example, use such a whole lot of this screen.
It's only a quarter of the model setup screen to do the 3 timers. I mean, that doesn't seem like a waste of space at all, he says ironically.
Yeah. So the idea is to have it, really topic-like. So basically the timers are probably going somewhere else where only timers are, and where you hopefully won't lose yourself if you don't use timers. Obviously, you should be able to find if you use timers. And probably once they are configured, you don't need to go there anymore because they are configured, and that's it. The problem, our main problem right now is to survey this. So we need to have input from community for basically what are the most used features, etc. And obviously we cannot have apps on your phone or whatever where you are able to share your usage data with the manufacturer. We cannot do this because we don't have a connection and we don't have the resources to do this. But obviously this is something we should do. I mean, but we'll have to do it the analog way, like people telling us what they're using.
Yeah,
obviously.
One of the things I want to pick up on is the fact that you guys are fundamentally different from the OpenTX project in one way that makes me very excited. You guys have now started thinking about the fact it's not just developers rewriting the entire OpenTX code base and developing a touchscreen interface. You've actually now, with all of the feedback you're getting, you've actually now thought about, well, hang on a minute, there's the developers, but there's also the community and people looking at the interface from a usability point of view, which is something that I talked about in December, and I'm so excited that you guys have done that.
Yeah, in fact, we even have one member of the steering committee who is dedicated to exactly this. and who's pushing us all the time. And because he wants to have something to do, but he's, let's say, he's really the UX, I don't know if this is well-known stuff, like it's a, very fancy user experience. But this is what this is about. I mean, software isn't alone in space. It needs to be used. And this is its final goal, actually. If we have no users and if the users are not able to use the software, what is this for?
So let's talk a little bit about where we are now. I'm obviously getting lots of radios in from people like Radio Master that's shipping with EdgeTX. So lots of, whether you like it or not, you're going to get EdgeTX on your new radios. But the good news is my experience here is the EdgeTX that's shipping now as a die-hard OpenTX, I'll use all kinds of wacky stuff and use lots and lots of weird things to make the radio do funky things. I'm finding now that, with rare exception, the radios can do it. So where we are now after a year's work, because, Raphael, you, if I remember this rightly, you work in the nuts and bolts. You're kind of one of the nitty gritty guys. Has the code base, the solid foundation, going back to your house analogy, is that complete from the OpenTX stuff that you took on a year ago?
I would say so. It's probably never complete, but we've done some serious work. There is also so serial ports, it's all completely new. Module interface, completely new. Related to serial ports, of course, because modules are mostly serial ports. We've redone the pulses interface, which is for the modules that are driven by signals which are not necessarily serial, but some kind of different signal. So it's all using the same code now. And now I'm moving to peripherals. So basically, I don't know if it's something known like I2C. There are some stuff with this. So we will have some fancy stuff like automatic detection of IMU, if you have some in your radio, for example.
I love that, because also it would make it easier to make and modify controllers for people who have a disability, maybe one-handed or have lost fingers. It would allow them to fly. I think that's a fantastic idea.
The funny thing is actually the code I'm adapting. We had a proof of concept 4 years ago. It was in Italy, and we flew a easy glider which was heavily ballasted, like 1.5 kilo extra on it, but it flew perfectly. And the most interesting thing, I could use my friend's transmitter, which is mode 1. I use mode 2. I'm absolutely not able to fly mode 1. It's impossible for me. But that was a breeze. So we had some fun with it. And I hope we're going to be able to adapt this. And the nice thing is that we're moving toward all runtime. So trying to cut all these compilation options where we can and everything. So basically, it's only you go to the hardware menu. I mean, on a TX16S, for example, you would just connect the IMU on one of the external ports. Maybe you can do it internally with a bit of soldering and just tape it.
The version 2 of the TX16S has 2 internal ports, which would be brilliant for this.
Absolutely. Which was one of our requests, actually. The I2C bus is broken out at a place where you can actually use it.
Right. This makes a lot more sense because you're talking to each other. Fantastic. What a nice situation, projects that talk to each other and collaborate. Because I know you guys are also talking to ELRS as well as people like the hardware guys. And it means that everything is just so much more integrated, because you'll have, like we're joking now, I know that we came up with a couple of ideas from our chat in December, some of which have gone into the project. It just, like, talking to other people comes up with stuff. So let's talk about looking to the future then. So I'm kind of excited of what you've managed to achieve in 12 months, taking on the OpenTX code and getting to where you are. Looking out to the next 12 months, obviously one of the things that's a big part of that is continuing to consolidate and improve the core code base and provide support for things like you've discussed, but also it's changing and adapting and improving the GUI. I'm guessing that's one of the headlines for the next 12 months, is it?
Yeah. So we discussed this in the steering committee, and I'd like to call it the user experience here. So we're going to try to roll out features that make it simpler. So one thing I hope we get into 2.8, it's until June, so we have to hurry up, is to be able to switch on and off, single features, which will basically make things disappear from the screens that you don't use. So the example Robert likes to take is actually trims for quad flyers.
Yeah.
So you could make trims disappear from the screen, and from the menus and blah blah blah. So and the heli tab, of course, the heli tab. Everyone is asking, hey, where do I get the build without the heli tab? Well, the good answer is 2.8 will have a set of checkboxes basically where you say, no, I don't want the heli tab on this model. So, and a few others which we identify as, not used so often.
Flight modes would be probably another one. Most people don't use those.
Exactly. And if we find the time, there is an ID, which I think is quite good, which would be, depending on the model type that you select when you create a model, we would have a preset of these on and off features, selected for you. So obviously, if you select a quad, the trims wouldn't be there because you probably won't use them. You can still activate it if you really like to, but and the trims would still be usable as buttons. It's just the mixers won't offer you to use the trim feature, or it's going to be ticked off by default, and these kind of things. But it's just an example. Like flight modes would be another, and things which are not mainstream, obviously, but are very prominent on screen right now, and also isolating topics, so you find things easier. And this is going to be the fun part, because we're probably going to have the discussion that we had is, yeah, but what about all the OpenTX diehard guys who are going to say, hey, where is my feature gone and whatever? Then, well, some people will have to relearn things because we're going to move them around.
Yeah. And
the more input we get, the more people we have who have a spare radio or whatever for testing, nightlights, whatever build, in the process, can influence and help us find the right way to do it.
And as an OpenTX guy who tends to get into the weeds with OpenTX, I have no issue having a radio button or something in the menu that allows me to turn on advanced mode or whatever you call it, that then gives me access to all that goodness. Because as somebody who spends 2 hours every day helping people with OpenTX issues on their radio, having 5 screens rather than 20, right, would be amazing. So I love the idea of when you set up something like a Betaflight quad, you just have the screens that are relevant for a Betaflight quad. If you set up a slope soarer, you have all these extra things that are, all the flight modes and all that stuff come into play. I love that idea.
So it's still not clear how we're going to provide this, but this will possibly be related to model templates. So basically, in the YAML file, we will provide a set of templates for things we think are, nice, which will not only include, mixers like you do normally, like for a slope soarer, for example. I don't know which type of mixer I could really add, but it will include a set of, predefined stuff for activating, deactivating some screens, whatever. Yeah. So, and obviously you can tweak those templates if you want, but
I love the idea of because if in that kind of environment, there could actually be templates that's made by the community, if that's supported by the architecture. It opens up a whole raft of things, doesn't it?
You can have the Lee special set of templates which fits with the videos. But by the way, I have a bad news for you. Oh. You will have to redo quite some of your explaining videos because the screens are going to change.
I have no issue with that at all. I've started EdgeTX, a new EdgeTX series right now. I've been waiting because things have changed so dramatically over the past 12 months. I kind of had to wait for things to calm down before I started. Otherwise, every video I made after 4 weeks would kind of be out of date. So I've just started, but I have no issue if it's going to help the community and you guys are going to optimize the screen. Because what you're talking about is, I think, the first step of what you and I discussed in December, which is taking the existing OpenTX interface and optimizing it and enhancing it and taking out some of the fat. But, we've also talked about the futures of what then the interface could become, because that interface is very clunky. Like you said, nobody was looking at it from a usability point of view. OpenTX has just slammed in more and more stuff. You guys have inherited that interface and it is suboptimal, I think, let's say that. But the more you understand about how people use the radios, the better and better you can redefine the interface. Because some of the radios that are the easiest to use, people like the Spectrum and Fatabas, and even some of the stuff that FreeSky is doing, have a completely different way of you accessing stuff. It's kind of widget based, isn't it? So there's a widget for trims, there's a widget for channel reversing, there's a widget for timers. But I know you guys have all this on the future, and this is what I'm excited about. I need to say thank you to you for keep listening to me banging on.
Yeah. So obviously we're not going to become at once a Futaba radio operating system.
Good.
But that being said, I think it makes sense to introduce a couple of easy to use features. Like, let me take one example. You can normally, if you want dual rates, you're going to do it with inputs. So you're going to have multiple input lines with different rates and selected by a switch.
Yeah.
So whereby this is beautifully generic, this is nice and everything. And I studied mathematics and computer science. So for me, it all makes perfect sense because I like to factorize things, generalize. The less I have to learn, the better it is. However, I do realize that I'm not alone in this world and that my way of thinking is not the way everybody thinks.
Absolutely.
So we need to help these people as well. And having somewhere, a setting for dual rate doesn't hurt so much. So we're probably going to have some of these. So it's not yet clear which ones exactly needs to be really 100% mainstream. It's about seeing keywords on a screen. So you want dual rates. You have seen something that what you need is dual rates. Now you will see that this does not appear anywhere on any screen in EdgeTX. So you might be lost. So you will start looking for videos and you will see that, wow, it's probably going to take you half a day or maybe a day to learn how to make dual rates.
Because you have to learn how to assign a switch. You have to learn what the kind of the rates, the throws are, and how to do that. How to add multiple inputs in the same line. There's several things you have to do, and I agree. I think it's lovely that you guys have identified that this is the issue. Because for me, I agree. It makes sense to me too. But then we're technical people with technical backgrounds. So you know what? For us, it's like programming.
There are a couple of things like that also for hardware settings. Like, let's say you want a volume button.
Great example. Yeah.
The volume button is, interesting. So first, it will work only once the model is actually started, which means after all the warnings, after all the things. Okay, you could put it globally, but then it will work only after all the first warnings and everything. So that could be a bit cumbersome. Also, you need to set up a special function and, which makes things quite complex. What I want is actually to have in the radio settings where you say, hey, volume. So you have the slider, and just below you have, hey, but I want to assign a knob.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want the slider. I want a knob. So yeah, so you have a button, assign a knob. Yes, marvelous. And then when you move that knob, the slider moves. Well, that's great. And it always works.
Yeah.
Not just from some point in time, whatever. So obviously there's a bit of a headache ahead because some people will want to keep this special function for some reason, but frankly, they need to have a very good reason because I think we can really kick that special function altogether. Same for backlight. So we might keep some kind of activable backlight programmatically per Lua or whatever. But backlight is definitely something that is going to a direct, I want to assign a knob for God's sakes. I don't want to go into global functions, then check that my model uses those global functions. By the way, there was, Mike Shellim, I think.
No, I don't know, Mike.
Yeah, okay, so that's his nickname actually on, maybe it's his real name, I don't know, on RC Group, fairly old OpenTX user who tried now lately, and he moved to his Amazed. And he was like, hey, this global function doesn't work. And then I was like, wait a second, I tested it works. Second guy, well, I tested it works. And then he said, oh, yes, I just discovered in the YAML file that the global functions are actually not used in this model. And I'm like, oh, you look in the YAML file? And he was like, oh, yeah, well, it's way more usable than looking for all the menus, actually, because you have everything in one file. And I was like, oh, yes, why not?
Okay, yeah.
So that was an interesting use, actually. He's using the YAML files for debugging because it's easier to see everything at a glance in one file. Anyway, that's for the small story. But these are the couple of things where I think we're making it unnecessarily complicated for the sake of having it generic. And it's not fairly generic, actually. I don't see why I should have a global function for this.
I think a lot of the stuff in OpenTX is legacy. It was things that was added in as the OpenTX system got more and more complicated and pilots had more and more requirements. And I think it's great that you guys are now looking at it from a usability point of view and looking to apply that methodology to what's actually in the menus and put things back where they probably need to be, and they should have probably been in the first place, but they got put somewhere else because, with all due respect to the open devs, because without OpenTX we wouldn't have EdgeTX. But I love the fact that the EdgeTX interface is going to be a little bit more intuitive for those of us that haven't spent the last 10 years playing with it. I think for me, I am now starting to get really excited about EdgeTX as somebody who has been a big user of OpenTX and used lots of those little minutiae things that maybe, 80% of pilots don't get into. I'm feeling a lot more confident. I think looking forward to the year, I'm very excited about the fact that we're going to continue to see improvements in the GUI. I love the fact you've now given me a whole nother series to make on EdgeTX interface. I might wait another month or two before I start it. I'll wait for you guys to get another couple of major versions under your belt. But, I need to say thank you again for your time, and thank you for listening to the community. I love the fact that you guys are actually engaging with the community, with people like the ELRS team, with people like Radio Master, with people like me, the community in as a wider piece, because I think it's going to result in a much, much better operating system that's easy to use, more powerful, and actually is a firm foundation for the next 8 to 10 years in the hobby. So thank you to you and everybody for doing the work that you do, and for not making us pay for it, which is lovely. Thank you so much for that. I'll let you get on with your holiday. Thank you again. I'll put links down below in the video for if you need any help or support where the Discord is and stuff. And as we continue to talk, if there's a place where there's a way, the team to figure out a way for us to constructively feedback which parts of the radio and EdgeTX system we access all the time so they can figure out what that common bit is, I'll publish that here on the channel, so stay tuned. So thanks again to Raphael, and stay tuned for more EdgeTX stuff that's coming soon. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.